All right, let's talk about how to multiply fractions using an area model, how to show that, make it concrete or pictorial for students. Just a quick review. I like to remind my students of this as well, of how to use the area model just to multiply whole numbers. So you can see this is a visual or pictorial depiction of 3 times 4. You've got three rows of 4 or 4 columns of 3, and you can pretty easily find the total there and see that 3 times 4 is 12. Of course, that's the case for any height and width of a rectangular array like that. You can see there that 3 times 2 is 6. It's a real visual way to help students gain a strong, deep understanding of this idea of multiplication, of equal groups multiplication. That's the area model. If you keep shrinking that down, you can see that 3 times 1 there, you can see is 3. But if we zoom in even further, if we slice that in half, now we can start talking about multiplying fractions, right? It's just an extension of what we've been doing with our whole numbers. But what if instead of being 1 square width wide, it's only half wide? And students, by the time they get to, third, fourth, fifth, certainly grade, can definitely move these gray squares around, and they can figure out exactly what 3 times a half is. They can get a visual, concrete understanding of how 3 times 1/2 is 1.5, because they can take this gray rectangle and they can visually slide it up here to show one whole square, and then they see that they have half a square left over. So by doing some multiplication work with whole numbers times fractions, especially if you use an array model like this, it can help students really understand that content deeply. And then, of course, we can continue to zoom in further. We zoom all the way in on that 1 square, and we say, well, what if the area that we're looking at is only half a square wide and a fourth of a square tall? The students can visually sketch this out. They can do this themselves, and they can see that what we'd have is one piece that we're looking at, one piece that's gray here, out of 8 altogether. And if you do a couple of these, students start to develop an understanding that the denominator, the number on the bottom, is always going to be the product of the two denominators here. They can figure that out, that rule out, just by playing around with a picture like this. And then as you extend that out, if you have them play around with 1/4 times 1/3, they'll just start to intuitively see that, oh yeah, you're going to have 12 pieces, because you'll have 3 in each row and you'll have 4 rows. Again, this takes a little practice, a little experience to allow students to construct that understanding, but it's a really powerful thing once they do. And of course, from there, it's a fairly easy step to see that the number of gray pieces, the number of pieces that we're going to consider, is just the product of the numerators. That if you did 2/3 times 3/4, if you had an area that was 2/3 wide and 3/4 tall, that the total number of gray pieces here is just going to be the product of the numerators, 3 times 2, or 6. And they've already developed an understanding that the denominator of our answer is going to be the product of the 2 bottom numbers. So by experimenting, exploring, allowing students to construct an understanding of this multiple times, just helping them to see in a visual way how to multiply those fractions together using an area model, then you allow them to construct and to develop a real deep understanding of why we can just multiply the numerators and why we can just multiply the denominators to get the answer when we're multiplying fractions. That's going to stick with them for the rest of their lives. Thanks.